This time on the Q Division podcast, we open the case of 1964's Goldfinger.
This time, can you actually decapitate a statue with a hat?
Can straight guys resist talking about cars?
And are you too immune to James Bond's charms? Or are you just gay?
All that and more on the Q Division. Hello, agents. Welcome to another episode of the Q Division. I'm Gavin, and I've seen all the James Bond movies.
I'm Chels, and I've seen 3 movies and a TV special, but it wasn't special.
No, it really wasn't special.
It wasn't.
But you know what is special? The Q Division's top secret mission, which is to take a deeper look at the history and impact of the James Bond films and other media through a queer lens. Speaking of, the Q Division is a proud member of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective. You can find out more about Glitterjaw and their roster of shows that run the gamut of queer media at glitterjaw.com.
Gay rights.
Yeah, gay rights. Oh, all the gay rights. But we're not alone this week because we are talking about 1964's Goldfinger. And we can't possibly do that alone. What a huge subject. What a milestone in the James Bond world. So what we're doing is we're bringing in a secret guest agent. We're activating him to help with our analysis. Please welcome director and editor Cody Joel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here as the resident Kentuckian and the resident straight man, offering all insights. I've got 30 minutes planned to talk about solely the DB5. So brace yourself for that.
We're braced.
How do I follow that up? Cody, thank you so much. I have not seen you in years, but when I was thinking about starting a James Bond podcast, you were literally one of the first people I thought of because one of the very first conversations we ever had was about James Bond. We both worked together as editors. What are you working on now? I'm going to let you plug your stuff here. I'm going to let you plug your stuff at the end of the show.
Please. Thank you so much. Yeah. You and I worked together many moons ago, and I think you thought of me first because I constantly texted you saying, when are you going to do a James Bond episode on your other podcast? So lo and behold, you have an actual dedicated podcast, not just an episode. So that's I'm very pleased about that. No, I've just cut a feature called Neighborhood Watch with Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Jack Quaid, and that will be coming out next year. So please go see it. Hopefully it's in a theater near you.
Yeah.
I love both of those men, and I think many people in our audience probably love both of those men, even though they are unfortunately straight. So,
But one's married to Hillary Burton, though, and that's just canonically queer to a
Yes.
generation of people like me.
I would say it's a buddy cop, film noir, dark comedy kind of vibe. I would say what are comps? Like, I don't feel Kiss Kiss Bang Bang maybe, and I don't feel at home in this world. So if you enjoyed those, I really think you'll enjoy this one.
Oh, like dropping I don't feel at home in this world is like so there is some darkness to it, like real darkness there.
Yes, well, that's the luxury of cutting a dark comedy is that if the jokes don't land, you just go, well, it's a dark comedy. It's
Exactly. Well, that's kind of perfect for this episode because this is the first James Bond to kind of move the needle a little more towards satire parody of itself, which is kind of funny because I've never really looked at it through that lens before, but the more I did the research on it and then rewatching it after doing the research, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I see what's going on here. We're not playing everything so straight. And I thought that was really interesting. Chels, I'm going to go to you real quick before we even get into the production. How are you feeling? I always like to check in with you specifically because you've not seen these films before.
So this one I have enjoyed a lot. I saw that it was much sillier. The Austin Powers of it all, we found the gold nugget, as we could say. But man, does he love to slap a woman around,
Yeah.
body shield. Woo, the misogyny is rampant in it, a little rapey in there. Woo! But outside of the general hatred of women, this was a romp. I enjoyed it.
General hatred of women, check. General hatred of people of color, check.
Yep.
Especially in the book, though doesn't really carry over to the film as much, but there's still kind of every person of color is a servant, that sort of vibe.
There's also a lot of race swapping in it that I didn't realize until today, basically. But we'll get into that later.
And somehow it feels less racist than the other ones we've watched.
Yeah, exactly.
If you love the racism in this one, just wait till you only live twice.
You know what's funny about that specifically too, Cody, is that we've not currently invited any guests on that episode because I don't want to subject them to that movie. And it's I was telling my boyfriend that, and he's like, then why watch it? He's like you have to come up with some thesis for your episode that's not just don't watch this movie.
Sure.
And so when we get to it, it'll be quite the fun time between Chels and I, I'm sure.
I'll bring a drink to that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Stock up, Chels. Fill up your beautiful 007 martini glass that you gifted me, and
Yes.
yeah, take it to the brim.
And in the words of Felix Leiter, enough liquor for three.
Yes. Cody, I do want to ask your background with this film. I know this is one of the most famous James Bond films. Do you have any sense memory connection to seeing this film at a young age at all, or?
Yeah, so this was one of the first James Bond movies I saw. As a Kentuckian, this one is really important to me because we sort of grew up with the, stories of it being shot in Louisville in the 60s. As I got older, I come to find out that Sean Connery never set foot in North America during the entire filming, and I was absolutely devastated. But nonetheless, our house cleaner as a kid, she was an extra in this movie. I couldn't find her upon rewatch, but that was, I think it's actually sort of built into the lore, which I really enjoy, because in my head, Sean Connery was in Kentucky, and that made it feel really special to me. So, this is one of the first ones I remember seeing, and I think still to this day, it's one of my top 3 favorites.
That's actually really interesting because there's a lot of places Sean Connery didn't go to during the filming of this movie, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But I wonder how much of that myth has been carried over into all of the production sites of the many different places that Bond has taken place over the years. But I honestly, if anything had shot in the small town I grew up in, people would have been like, I think we had Basket Case, the movie about the little Belial mutant that lives in a in a box. So yeah, that's about it for Glens Falls, New York. So nothing as romantic as Sean Connery getting there. All right. Why don't we move into a little bit about the production of Goldfinger? Goldfinger, the novel, is the 7th James Bond book published in March 23rd of 1959. While the film contains several differences from the book, the movie follows a very similar plot. However, the book also presents many uncomfortable passages that have not aged well since its release nearly 66 years ago, including referring to Oddjob and any other Korean in the novel as to be, quote, rather lower than apes in the mammalian hierarchy.
Yeesh.
Great, Ian Fleming. Good job there. Just being racist right off the bat.
So technically, the movie is actually quite progressive compared to the book.
100%. And that's what and even the stuff that Guy Hamilton has said specifically about Sakata, who plays Oddjob, have been so nice and favorable. And clearly he was this person's employer, but it's nice to see that Sakata was treated rather well on the set, and unlike what Ian Fleming probably would have treated him as.
From all accounts, what I found out in my research is that he was just the most lovely man, and also deserves his own movie, because this guy is a World War II vet, is a professional wrestler, and is a Olympic silver medalist in weightlifting. Just really impressive guy all the way around.
Yeah, after looking at that, looking him up after watching the movie, I can firmly say I love him. He needed his own franchise. Anytime he was just smiling so big while just destroying people made me so happy. Oh,
and this is, I read this, so I didn't know this, because I was trying to see, I looked at his IMDb to see, is he in anything else that I would recognize? And he apparently reprises the role of Oddjob in 1974 in a movie called The Wrestler, which I now really want to watch, because I'm like, how did they get around the licensing of that? And
right.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm very curious to see how that worked.
I know nothing of this film. I'm going to have to do some research. I wonder if it was shot in another country or something.
Is it a precursor to the Darren Aronofsky Wrestler that we all, because honestly the story sounds kind of similar. It's about a pro wrestler that's looking to redeem himself, and faces off against some characters like Odd Job.
He fights a 9-year-old Mickey Rourke in that movie, canonically. That's the... Back to the book, Bond's assertion of pussy galore wasn't much better. Bond, quote, liked the look of her. He felt the sexual challenge all beautiful lesbians have for men. And then upon realizing Tilly Masterton, not Master Son, like it is in the movie, which also Ian Fleming sadist for naming her Masterton, that doesn't roll off the tongue at all. Upon realizing that Tilly Masterton's a lesbian, this is the passage that follows in the book. Quote, Bond came to the conclusion that Tilly Masterton was one of those girls whose hormones had got mixed up. He knew the type well and thought that they and their male counterparts were a direct consequence of giving votes to women and, quote, sex equality. As a result of 50 years of emancipation, feminine qualities were dying out or being transferred to the males. Pansies of both sexes were everywhere, not yet completely homosexual, but confused, not knowing what they were. The result was a herd of unhappy sexual misfits, barren and full of frustrations, the women wanting to dominate and the men to be nannied. He was sorry for them, but he had no time for them.
Wow.
That's
Ian Fleming had some strong feelings on the lesbian population.
Yes. Truly.
He really would have hated me co-hosting this.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be the first one out.
Not just you, Chels. Not just you. Well, I also love this idea that, like, male pansies and female pansies, and, like, I guess what he's trying to get at with women is sort of butches, I guess, is his, like, problem with women, and he just can't...
You didn't have Urban Dictionary, it's okay.
Yes, exactly.
But this all stems from giving women the right to vote.
Of course. Oh, well, yeah, obviously.
We could have prevented all of this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, who needs it?
God, had we known. Had we known,
if only. When it comes to the film, Bond is finally hitting blockbuster status, starting with a budget of $3 million, which is the budget of the last two movies combined, and shooting in the UK, Switzerland, and the US. Some of the newer elements are introduced in this one to complement returning gimmicks. This adventure, Bond relies more heavily on gadgets. The humor is more apparent and tongue-in-cheek, and the cold open largely has nothing to do with the full movie, something we'll occasionally see later on. I love the fake-out cold open. I wish more Bond movies did it, where it's just like a side adventure, because you're getting like a little bit of like, this is what this guy does. He's a secret agent.
You get a bonus
Agreed.
story, right? And I think to Ken Adams' credit, like, we see that first in Adam's set, where I'm like, God, we just want to see more. It's almost wasted because you see it for, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that.
I have a note in here for that where I'm like, when we get into the movie where it's like Bond enters a silo and it can only be a Ken Adams set. Like, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's completely wasted because he just immediately blows it up.
Yeah.
Originally scheduled, the next film was to be on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but the film was deemed too hard for the timeline of getting the film out, specifically because of the shoot in Switzerland, which I think is funny because they end up shooting in Switzerland.
Well, it was about the skiing, though, right?
Yeah,
because they couldn't get the winter months to line up, and
right.
Because in the theatrical release it said James Bond will return on Her Majesty's Secret Service, right? And then it's on the home video, it's replaced with Thunderball.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And it's funny because they were also thinking about making Thunderball the next movie, but there was the major lawsuit going on about that, which I'm still putting a pin in that we will get to in the next episode. So Goldfinger was chosen as the obvious replacement. And after a pay dispute, Terrence Young passed on directing and Guy Hamilton was chosen by Broccoli and Saltzman. Guy Hamilton was an acquaintance of Ian Fleming. He actually already knew Sean Connery as well, and he was involved heavily in intelligence matters in the Royal Navy during World War II, so he kind of had that like Bondy connection. His big contribution to all of this is he sort of hated the Bond of the first two movies being too much like a Superman. He thought that Bond was getting by on just being what nowadays we would call a Mary Sue. Like, he just sort of had the answer to every single problem. I hate that phrase, but, you know, just for the kids. And so he was like, no, we need more extreme villains and we need more reliance on fun gadgets. And I think that alone changes sort of the tone of what is gonna happen in Goldfinger.
I think that actually maybe went even too far, because when you look at this Bond, you know, I had read that Connery was kind of unsatisfied with it because he felt that the Bond character is constantly behind the ball in this movie, right? Like he's always playing catch up.
It's funny too, because we've talked in the previous 2 films, specifically of Connery's Bond, is that he's just constantly walking into traps. But I think the difference between the Goldfinger Bond and the From Russia with Love, Dr. No Bond is he's walking into traps knowing he'll get out of them. And this Bond is constantly walking into traps and being like, fuck, I'm in a trap.
Bro, he's unconscious for like a third of the movie. Like,
yeah.
He's always unconscious in this movie.
Literally, there are several times where the villain could have just like, I don't know, 1 bullet.
Yo,
taken him out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Several of the previous films' cast return, including Bernard Lee as M, Desmond Llewellyn as the newly minted Q, and Lois Maxwell. New to the cast was Gert Frobe. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm terrible with foreign names. Who was starring as the, titular Ulrich Goldfinger. His accent was deemed too thick and too slow for the movie, so he had to be dubbed by actor Michael Collins, though in order to get that dubbing to happen, they actually had to speed up his performance in post. But shockingly, this has been referred to as one of the best dubs in film history. There's really only one scene in the movie where you can actually hear Gert Frobe, which is when Bond is listening from below when they're all in the meeting room. That's for some reason the only scene they decided not to dub him, and I don't really know why. Because that would be the easiest scene to dub him, because you don't have to match lips.
I love that.
Yeah, it's the accept crime line, right? Is his?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's feminism, though. We've had so many women dubbed in the other movies. Finally a man.
I don't want to tell you this, but the dubbing did not stop with him. It's also Jill Masterson. Jill
Masterson.
I mixed them up so much, but yeah, Jill Masterson is dubbed by a what's her name? Nikki Vanderzil, who apparently dubbed like most of the Bond women in the first few movies. So they just deemed her voice sexy, or I don't know. But basically, they were casting these women based on looks and not necessarily on acting ability. So they said, just cast whoever looks great, and then, we'll have Nikki voice in the rest. So, it does not stop at Auric, unfortunately.
Not surprising at all.
But this was actually at the time it was more common. The idea that Darth Vader is actually voiced by someone else was very commonplace at the time.
And it's also just really funny because the last couple episodes, Chels has brought up this idea of well, then who is the Bond woman? Is it the person who's embodying the Bond woman, or is it the person doing the voice? And honestly, and listen, Jill Masterson's not long for this world, but it's a solid question. Also joining the cast was Honor Blackman as Pussy Galore, chosen based on her role as Kathy Gale in the British TV series The Avengers, a role which required her to study judo extensively, and so the martial art was written into the movie to make Pussy more formidable against Bond. U.S. censors initially asked for her name to be changed to Kitty Galore, but Guy Hamilton was later quoted in a 2002 article in Empire magazine called Bond, The Legend, 1962 to 2002, saying, quote, "Please no one write in to me about this. If you were a 10-year-old boy and you knew what that name meant, you weren't a 10-year-old boy, you were a dirty little bitch." The American censor was concerned. I know, a dirty little bitch. Guy Hamilton, you heard it first. The American censor was concerned, but we got round that by inviting him and his wife out to dinner, and we told him we were big supporters of the Republican Party.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Honestly, a con that would work today.
Yes. Absolutely. That's all you have to say.
I love that his argument is yeah, but if your kid gets it, you're a shit parent, so it's kind of on you.
Exactly. That's on you, babes. Reportedly, Honor Blackman also took delight in forcing reporters to say her character's name as much as they possibly could during interviews, and I love that about Honor Blackman.
It's a little bit of redemption for her character against the misogyny of the time.
Oh, absolutely. You know what's funny? Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it in the movie, but the misogyny is very real. Finally, the cast is rounded out by Shirley Eaton as Jill Masterson, though as pointed out earlier, dubbed. and Harold Sakata as Oddjob. We mentioned Sakata's background as an Olympic silver medalist weightlifter, but he was personally selected by Guy Hamilton himself. Hamilton said, quote, an absolutely charming man, and they worked together to base a lot of Oddjob's specific movements and mannerisms in the movie off of Sakata's movements and mannerisms himself.
I was watching one Saturday afternoon. There used to be wrestling, and there was Oddjob on television. Harold Sakata came on, and everybody booed, and there was Oddjob. And Harold Sakata had been a serious athlete, had been the first Hawaiian to get a silver medal at the Olympics.
Harold was a monumentally strong but very genuine and gentle guy. And he gave me that chop behind the neck at the fridge. He put me on the floor. He wasn't quite used to the cinema technique of taking it to the wire and then stopping, you know. And some days I think I still have it from then.
However, Sakata did suffer some really gnarly burns during the shooting of Oddjob's death by electrocution, but he refused to break character during the scene until Guy Hamilton called cut. And he was literally reported as saying, like, no, I wasn't going to let go of the hat until you said cut.
Wow. That was not the only guy. The henchman in the very beginning as well suffered very bad burns from the bathtub electrocution scene. So they had not mastered the. I think this whole movie is basically just James Bond learning about electricity.
Yes, exactly.
Because he kills two henchmen with electricity, and there's sort of bookmarks on the beginning and end.
He does rely on it quite a bit. That henchman, by the way, is, speaking of race switching, is a white guy in brownface. And I guess they had actually, like, not to defend EON, you know, from 60 years ago, but they had cast an actual Mexican actor to play the role. And he was a cat burglar and was arrested the night before shooting. And so they just basically found a crew member who had, quote, high cheekbones and painted him brown.
If you want to make it worse, Bonita, in the belly dancer in that scene, is also a Serbian woman.
Amazing.
Posing as a Mexican. So, yeah, not a single...
I mean, this all tracks considering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I guess From Russia with Love did have a Mexican actor playing a Turkish person. So I don't know. I don't think there is a 1-to-1 system, I guess, but like,
well, yeah,
better.
Harold Sakata is Japanese playing a Korean as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Did you notice, Gavin, as an editor, all of the unnecessary speed ramps throughout the movie?
Yes. Oh, yeah, and we're going to get to that in just a second because, actually, why don't we talk about it now? This is our show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
The editing itself, Peter Hunt returned as an editor from the last two movies. If everybody remembers what we talked about in the last couple of movies, Peter Hunt's, like, objective was to make sure the movie wasn't boring and thought, like, speed ramps really helped those fights and whatnot. And it's funny because the first two movies, I feel like he's a little restrained, and I know that they're on a very tight clock for the second and third movie, but like the second movie doesn't even have that many. There's a couple, but it's not intrusive. And this one's like every single fight Bond is in. There's like all those weird speed ramps. There's when he crashes into the wall. And I get what Peter Hunt's objective was, but I almost think it was like, okay, what you're doing is too much. Like
it almost feels like they're like, we liked what you did in that movie. Let's keep doing that. But like over and over and over in the same movie.
It's first when he takes off the scuba mask in
Yes.
the cold open, right? Which seems like a strange time to do it. But it's almost reminiscent of Die Another Day. There's a lot of unnecessary speed ramps in that as well. Also with Bond in a wetsuit.
Yeah, true. Which is also an interesting dichotomy because it shows you the different styles of, this is a very Ederly conversation for those of you at home.
Yeah.
But it shows you the different styles of speed ramping because even though Die Another Day was still being shot on film, the technology had caught up in a way that like it doesn't look as jarring as it did back during the Goldfinger era, the 1964 of it all. But you're right, it does still exist and it is very apparent if you're looking for it in Die Another Day. But yeah, I wonder... the thing about Die Another Day, not to go off on a tangent, is that it's trying to be so reverent to every sort of James Bond that came before it. And so I'm almost wondering if that was like an in-gag just taken too far.
And it was also very a product of its time, right? So like the early 2000s music videos and stuff were doing all of that. So unfortunately, yeah, we paid the price for that.
Absolutely. Oh, there's so much we paid the price for on Die Another Day. Ken Adams returned from Dr. No as the production designer and infused the film with a, quote, luxury baroque that comes directly from him. Bob Simmons also returned as stunt coordinator from the first movie, choreographing the final fight between Bond and Oddjob, and just does... The only reason I wanted to bring that up is just because I think chef's kiss to Bob Simmons. That fight is amazing.
Well, also the gentleman from the barrel sequence, right? In the first three, this one included, it's the same barrel sequence as the prior two movies, all of which have Bob Simmons instead of Sean Connery.
It's almost as if Sean Connery is like, that's beneath me. Like,
I'm not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Richard Maybaum returned to write the script, fixing the issue with the novel that it's impossible to empty Fort Knox of gold in a couple of hours. I think calculated, they said it would take a matter of weeks to remove all of the gold from Fort Knox. So they were just like, why don't we do something different? Harry Saltzman disliked that draft and brought in Paul Den to make the movie, quote, less American. Connery hated that draft, and Maybaum was brought back in. And then Maybaum and Den's outline for the script after that, when they worked together, has become basically the blueprint for many of the subsequent James Bond movies that came after it. So they, I guess, cracked the code once they started working together. The only cast member who was reportedly available to shoot the Miami stuff was Sek Linder, the film's new Felix Leiter, who replaced Dr. No's Jack Lord, who had demanded more money and co-star billing.
Which is insane. Yeah, this is insane to me. And it sort of explains why there's been 9 Felix Leiters.
Yes, exactly. I cannot imagine being like, yes, my 4 scenes, I need my name next to Connery's.
Yeah, I'm equally as important as the guy in the movie is named after.
Connery was too busy filming Marnie, the Alfred Hitchcock film, to film his scenes in Miami, and the other actors, it was just decided if he wasn't available, the rest of them could all be shot on a sound stage. We're going to talk about the Fontainebleau in just a little bit when we get to the part of the movie.
I cannot wait because I have stayed there. And let me tell you,
amazing! All 3 of us have been there.
Really?
That's amazing. Yes,
it's the worst. It's the worst I've ever been to.
Wait, save it. We got to talk about that.
I'm gonna save it.
Ian Fleming was able to visit the set of Goldfinger in April of 1964, but unfortunately he died a few months later in August 1964, shortly before the film's release. So this was the last James Bond movie that he got to sort of enjoy the limelight for. But once again, he made all those racist, homophobic comments in the book. So you know what? Fuck him.
It's like rest in hell, man.
The interior of Fort Knox is all made up. Though many people thought it was very real, which was the greatest compliment to Ken Adams, which is also really funny because Harry Saltzman thought the vault itself looked too fantastical, but Guy Hamilton got the final say on because he was directing the movie. So he's just like, yeah, build these sets. They were allowed to fly over the real Fort Knox, but they were told that they could fly no lower than 3,000 feet. And Guy Hamilton was like, fuck that. They dropped to 500 feet and everybody lost their shit during the filming of that. The scenes of the army falling over after being gassed were all of the same actors, just repeated in different locations. So if you could zoom in enough, it's literally all the same people.
It's the same dude. Yeah. Which is it's very immensive, by the way. They were great actors. That was
honestly,
apparently
I love that quick drop where they're just like, sorry.
No, and that was the last shot of the movie too, sorry, the last in order of filming. That was the last thing they shot, which is apparently only a matter of weeks before the release.
We got a squad, a sergeant, and we ran these soldiers round, and I set them up in all the places I could remember. And I said, now what you do is, when I blow the whistle once, you all look up there. When I blow the whistle twice, you all fall down dead. And they thought this was the silliest thing that they had ever been asked to do in their born days. But we said, you're all going to get $10 and a beer, for $10 and a beer. But by now we're opening in 3 weeks' time, practically.
Yeah, I was going to say it didn't occur until like right before the movie was released, which is wild. Guy Hamilton, as previously mentioned, really pushed for this emphasis on gadgets. And while the script only originally called for the Aston Martin to use the smoke screen, Hamilton took suggestions literally from every single crew member to add more things to the car, including an ejector seat, a suggestion from his nephew, which is why I think the ejector seat is so fucking hilarious in the movie.
We need to listen to children more.
Exactly. Yeah. It was the only gadget that didn't all the rest of them worked the way that they were meant to work as well, except for the ejector seat.
I went home and I got a telephone call saying, would I go back to the studios next day? And I thought, oh, good. I got an extra bit in the film. And when I got there, they gave me this bit about the ejector seat.
If you take the top off, you'll find a little red button. Whatever you do, don't touch it.
No, why not?
Because you'll release this section of the roof and engage and fire the passenger ejector seat. Whoosh.
Ejector seat? You're joking.
And, of course, it gave me the chance of producing, I suppose, one of the most famous lines.
I never joke about my work, 007.
The chassis would have taken a proper ejector seat, and the guy next, the driver, would have got burnt anyhow. So I used compressed air on that in a lightweight dummy.
The whole thing works. I mean, it's just, it's a dream. It's your dream. Wouldn't it be fun to have a car like that?
And there's so many that weren't even used in the film. There's like ball bearings that come out to like ruin tires and whatnot.
You forgot the
there's
thermos.
So much. The thermos, yes.
The thermos with the working grenade top is is very underutilized in the Bond world. He just has a quick little Campbell's chicken noodle soup and then throws the lid off and it, disables a tank or whatever.
That's perfectly how it should work. That's how all the gadgets should work. Gold is a heavy motif in the film. It's being used in almost every aspect of the sets. It's kind of a fun little look at, if you pay attention, the costumes also have gold. And it's funny, I noticed this in the movie, but there's not a lot of info on it. Pussy's nails are also painted gold, which I love.
I didn't notice that.
Cool.
I
love that it's a little bit he does act, even though she's very I'm independent, he owns her.
Yes.
However,
even the Mustang was meant to be gold, and they didn't get it at the time because this car was not out in 1964. So they gave them what they got, which was white with red interior.
Which still really works for the movie, honestly.
No, it's beautiful.
Cool
And it's it wasn't his car, so why did it need to be gold in the first place? But
however, Jill Masterson's death in the film, her cause of death by being painted completely gold, is fictional. Just a myth busted right there. Though the film did cause many to believe that this is something that could happen. I believe, to my knowledge, what I've read, your skin can suffocate, but it's not really a cause of dying. It's not.
And I think to their credit, they thought that this was real science at the time.
Yes. Oh yeah.
They all legitimately believed if you left a small patch at the bottom of the spine unpainted, you would survive. But
right.
What a time to retire. You have this very public, very iconic moment, and then you retire shortly after, and I'm yeah, this is how conspiracy theories start. We are done.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and they even recycle it in Quantum of Solace with the oil on the strawberry fields.
Which, honestly, you will learn this when we get to that episode, I truly hate that director. I don't think he's ever made a good movie.
Yeah.
That image is actually very cool. And I will say, I guess when I saw it in the theater, I was just I guess she drowned in oil. I don't know.
It does look more convincing than Jill being painted gold. You're oh, she's fine. She's just having a nap and she's also gold.
She's just having a nap and also gold.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's literally what it looks like.
I want that image on a shirt and then just that over and under.
Logistically, when did they do this? When did they drag her out into the hallway and they had it ready to go with the airbrush or something? Or when did this?
And Bond's just unconscious during that scene. It's not they drugged him.
I told you he's unconscious for a third of this movie. God knows what. There's another World War while he's unconscious. Who knows? Who knows what goes on while Bond's knocked out?
John Barry returned to score the film, and he felt that this time he was in complete control because he got to write both the music for the film and the opening song with lyrics by Anthony Newley and Leslie Briskus. The combination of Bond's brassy music and Shirley Bassey's unforgettable belting made this one of the best Bond themes and most memorable ones to date.
And then we did a tour together, and he conducted for me. And it was at the end of the tour, he said to me, I've just written the music for the next Bond film. And I went to his apartment and he played me the music. I heard that dun dun da 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 dun, and I just got goose pimples, just And I said, I don't care what the words are, I'll do it.
And I always remember when Shirley came into the studio and she said, what is this song about? I said, Shirley, it's a villain. Don't ask too many questions, just get in front of the mic and belt it.
To do it over and over again, I mean, it was an all-night session, and towards the end, I mean, I had this restricting bustier on it.
She said, just a minute, and then suddenly her bra came over the top of the thing. She said, now try it again.
So I let it all hang out. I took it, and I felt much more comfortable, and I was able to hit the note better anyway.
Women can do anything.
And she almost fainted, right? Did you read this as well? That she says she almost fainted holding the last note.
Which is funny, and we'll get to this in Thunderball, but there's another singer who tries to steal her thunder by actually passing out trying to hit the high note. And of course it's a man. Of course yeah.
I also read this. Jimmy Page. Did you read this, Gavin? The Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin comes on and is a day player guitarist on the soundtrack way before Led Zeppelin.
Oh, actually, no, I didn't read that. That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic?
Oh my God.
That's great.
Yeah. Wow, that's very cool. In terms of reception, films received very positively, both by audiences and, for the first time, critics, with most of the reviews finding the turn towards the slightly more towards parody to be a welcome addition to the films. The Guardian even went so far as to call the film garbage from the gods. Goldfinger's $3 million budget was recouped in 2 weeks, and it broke box office records around the world with a total gross of $125 million. At the 1965 Academy Awards, Norman Wanstall won the Academy Award for Best Sound Effects Editing, making Goldfinger the first Bond film to receive an Academy Award.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
And normally we end this with some sort of JFK fact, but he's unfortunately gone. Yeah, sorry.
Connery was on his way to meet the president at the end of this film,
yeah,
so sorry.
And Kennedy, the day before he died, watched From Russia with Love, which
exactly.
I really wish he could have seen this one because he would have loved it.
Oh, yeah, he would have absolutely loved it. Even though, once again, just saying it, the book is awful. Like, the book is so bad. I did reread the book for this. I'd read it when I was a teen, and I guess I just sort of, like, glossed over how terrible but it just racist, sexist. You mentioned earlier, Cody, there's, like, 3 chapters on golf. It's unbearable. Yeah.
That was I'd only read Moonraker, I think, and I was just shocked at the amount of paperwork and lunches that James Bond takes.
and the funny thing is I really like the book Moonraker, though there is some like questionable. I remember there being like some questionable racial politics in that too.
Is that one regarded? I mean, because the movie is obviously
it's completely different.
I don't think it's one of the better ones, but the book is regarded as one of the best books.
Yeah. And they've never really fully tried to adapt it. They took elements of it for Die Another Day, of course, but they also then once again went to the extreme and then created like a space laser and an invisible car.
Yeah, I mean, Bond is very a victim of its time, right? I mean, Moonraker tried to be Star Wars, right. License to Kill tries to be Scarface. It's just, this happens time and time again.
Oh, yeah. And we'll get to all of that. Like the one thing that's fun about Bond is watching it change to try and adapt to the time period it's in, whether that's good or bad. Sometimes it's real, real bad.
You make the first, it works. In making the second, we knew we had something going. By Goldfinger, we had a cultural phenomenon.
It was absolutely magic what was happening. There was screaming, there was yelling. You couldn't believe the audience reaction.
champagne, adventure, and all the sexual fantasies of the healthiest virile bachelor.
They were so transported by the magic that was Bond, they had a reaction completely out of self.
We started to play the picture 24 hours a day. That's how successful these Bond pictures were.
I think that's it for the production. Why don't we get into actually talking about the film? So we begin with the famous gun barrel. It does a little stop motion shrinking before we find ourselves in tropical Latin America. No names, just generic Latin America.
I want to say it's Mexico. Is it not? Is it definitely not Mexico?
In the book, I think it is Mexico, but in the movie they literally go out of their way to be like, no, we're not. We're just not going to mention.
Because what's the drug they're making? They're making a drug, right? Isn't that
I think it's heroin.
Yeah. Okay.
Bond, sporting a fake pigeon on his head, rises from the water, throwing his decoy away, and readies his Batman grapple gun to sneak into enemy headquarters. Hidden within a silo is what can only be described as a Get Adam set. It's gorgeous. Bond prepares some explosive and hightails it out of there. He peels off his wetsuit, and he's wearing a perfect white tux with black pants, just looking his Sean Connery best. Just pausing that here real quick. I do have to ask, Chels, I don't know if you've noticed this. Some say it's since Dr. No. Some say he was even wearing one in Dr. No. What did you think of Connery's hair? Because this is a new wig.
I didn't hate it. It didn't scream at me like many other wigs as a devout Drag Race viewer have scared me. Could have been worse is all I can say. It was perfectly inoffensive for what they were doing. I also, there was other stuff going on, y'all.
Well, I think to his, Connery said the last thing to go was his actual hairline, right? He's sort of falling from the top. And so it's less noticeable when it's a hairpiece, on the back of his head as opposed to, right here up front.
This is the one that looks the fakest to me, though. I've always thought that Goldfinger is the one. I think he specifically gets a different one in Thunderball, and I know he was wearing a different one in from Russia. And so this is the first one that I was like, oh, this is a hair. Even as a kid, I was like, this is a hairpiece. What's happening here? Which I don't mind. It does look, he looks fine, but it's one of those things
so your theory, because there is this going theory, right, that he claims that he's worn one the entire time, but someone else said he didn't wear one for the first two, that this is actually the first one where he's wearing a hairpiece.
Yeah, because he's said in interviews that he started going bald in his teens. So I truly don't know. I mean, I trust the man, I guess,
Yeah.
But
to me, he was the same age as me when he shot Goldfinger. So I lucky to not relate to Sean Connery on this. Although he was also Mr. Universe, so he's got something over me.
I was gonna say whatever your skincare routine is, then amazing, because he looks like your dad, and you do not. He makes his way to a bar and waits for the explosion. Before leaving for Miami, Bond makes a stop to make out with his current, very nude paramour, who we see belly dancing in the scene before. She asks why he always wears his gun, and he says that he has a slight inferiority complex and takes it off. It's a trap. He walks into a trap right away.
It's a tarp.
It's a tarp. He sees an attacker coming for him in the reflection of her eyes, which is one of the coolest shots in the movie, honestly.
Oh, loved it.
Uses her as a shield and then electrocutes his attacker in her bathtub. Shocking, positively shocking, he says. And boom, we're in the opening credits. Yes, Chels, this is, as you mentioned before, this is literally the start of him throwing a woman around. He physically, it'd be one thing if he tried to get them
push
both
her
out of the way.
Yeah.
No, he uses her as a human shield.
It's he would use her as a human shield. It's not even surprising at this point. He just sucks. I mean, she's probably trying to get him killed, but you know what? What? Go off, girl.
We didn't. If I can have my straight man corner for a second, is this a segment on the podcast called Straight Man Corner, where I have my own
little
straight speaks? Yeah, exactly. So no one mentioned the Rolex Submariner that he's wearing, which becomes the ultimate James Bond watch with the NATO strap, which is, again, referenced in No Time to Die. But this is a watch which now would cost you easily $100,000. So it's very coveted in the James Bond world and in the watch world as well.
Yeah, I have a secret, like, maybe the most straightest thing about me is I do secretly, like, covet all of the James Bond watches. I even had, like a shitty replica version of the GoldenEye Tomorrow Never Dies watch that he wears with the timer on it that I wore all throughout high school. So I will tell you, like, I do definitely, like, have an affinity for them. But yeah,
See, when I win the lottery, there'll be signs, even though I won't tell anybody. And one of the signs will be Gavin with his James Bond watch.
So my dad's 30th birthday present to me was a Seamaster from
oh my God.
that era, from the Tomorrow Never Dies sort of era. So
okay, Tomorrow Never Dies era. Okay, I was like, are you secretly rich? But that makes more sense.
No, not the Brando one. No.
The most iconic Bond song, as Shirley Bassey croons Goldfinger over a similar style open to From Russia with Love, as this is the second credit sequence by Robert Brownjohn. Sorry, that is a hilarious name.
It's
Except
a great
this
name.
time the women are painted gold. I liked this opening credit sequence. It was so much fun.
It's fantastic. It also gives a little bit of spoiler to the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I do too. I like it a lot, but I will say, like, I'm so happy when Maurice Binder does take back over the credits from Robert Brownjohn, because Robert Brownjohn's like, oh, I guess the credits from Russia with Love were a big hit. I guess I will do the same thing here, except the women are gold.
Well, and did you notice that the woman is the actress plays Dink from The Fontainebleau, Margaret Nolan?
I didn't realize that.
It's the very same lady, and she apparently at the time was, I don't know what you call her now. She's sort of like a softcore porn actress, or what they'd say is a page 6 model in the UK.
Yes, yeah.
I guess that equivalent at the time. So, that's her being projected on.
Amazing. I didn't know that.
Good for her.
And this is the first time as well that we've got like a top 10 Billboard hit.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe that's why I liked it more, just because the music was so good.
Yeah, well, and they didn't have, so I guess in with Russia, From Russia with Love, they didn't have the full track, right? They just had sort of an instrumental version of it.
Well, welcome to Miami Beach. We're greeted with aerials of the Fontainebleau Resort. Is this where we should bring it up, Gavin? That
we should talk about the Fontainebleau. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'll let you go first, because you seem to have the most experience.
I do, because I like when I saw the opening aerial shot, I'm like, oh, I've been there. I've worked there. I worked major media conferences. I say this is where I've had to wrangle the most celebrities in my life, and I can tell you all the stories when we're not recording. But my fun fact is, anytime I go there, I can get around that entire hotel like full super spy and never be caught. I know every little nook, cranny, underground, like, walkways, because they have so many different, like, passageways around there. It is so much fun. It is a wild hotel. Nobody will stop you.
I was heartbroken when I was there that I couldn't find a single Goldfinger reference. I mean, I saw lots of Frank Sinatra references, but I didn't see a single Goldfinger reference.
They should have actually brought Sean Connery there. And also Sinatra, let's just say the diva of divas would never have anybody else all over there. He had to be all over.
I think so they have a really quick shot of that in the movie where there is the ice rink, the outdoor ice rink. It just for a matter of seconds, but that was sort of this grandiose show of wealth at the time, is that, look, we're able to have an ice rink outdoors in Miami,
right?
And be able to keep it running, right? Which is, it's just totally ridiculous. But
can y'all believe I went there and everyone was starting to get sick, and then a couple months later there was a pandemic. Last time, no, not the last time I was there. I've been there since.
Wow.
No, the whole place, doesn't it just feel like Pitbull designed the entire place?
100%.
Like, he's responsible for
I mean,
the
it's
whole
Miami.
thing.
What can I say?
Yeah.
Gotta lean into it.
I remember getting two drinks and a salad, and it was $75 there.
I believe
That's anywhere on that section, not just the
That's
Fountain Blue,
horrible.
like Eden Rock next door, across the street.
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell you after the fact which celebrities wanted me to steal yachts with them.
I went to Miami Beach with Dan and his mom, well, and his dad as well too, but it was for his mom's birthday. I want to say like 2019, and we went to the Fountain Blue because she knows I'm a James Bond fan, and she bought me a drink and refused to tell me how much it was. But that drink was our prop in order to like get out to the pool area, because if you're not staying there, you're not supposed to go out into the pool area. But we had drinks in our hands and just followed some people out to the guy that was like checking wristbands or whatever. But yeah, so, but it does, you're 100% right. It has that sort of like tacky pit bull grandiosity to it that, yeah, it's quite the experience. But it is really funny that all three of us have been there, and most of the cast of this movie has not.
I feel like the Q Division podcast officially does not recommend the Fountain Blue.
Our Yelp review is
our official stance.
We will only go if I will show you around the parts you cannot see, which are fun. I'm much more of an Eden Rock girly. That's their neighbor that they've filed lawsuits against. I love it.
Wait, what was the lawsuit over?
The Fountain Blue, if they were able to build a certain way and it blocked the view of the swimming pools. I think the Fountain Blue actually won the lawsuit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was literally just like rich people and air rights, like going all the way back to burlesque. But yeah. But no, Bond's receiving massage, and he runs into the second Felix Leiter of the series. I think this Felix is hotter. I'm just gonna put it out there. I think he's hotter. Jack Lord's giving me like skeletal mummy face even before all of his work.
Yeah, but this guy's like a goofy Leiter. Like, I just kept being like, this guy's gonna just tell jokes. Like,
he's silly.
He doesn't seem that helpful, right?
No.
Like Jeffrey Wright seems very helpful.
No,
Right.
I would trust Jeffrey Wright with my life. This guy, I'm like, let's just hang out.
Yeah.
Speaking of hanging out, Bond sends a masseuse on her way with a loud smack on the bottom, which also, I would say that sound work, not very good.
no, and it won an Academy Award.
Insane. But yeah, that happens. Felix delivers marching orders from M to Bond. Bond has been tasked with observing bullion dealer Goldfinger, who Bond catches cheating at cards. Hilarious that this guy looks suspicious the entire time.
Yeah. It's funny. I put in a sidebar here saying, I think we're supposed to think, because he's like a heavier set guy and whatnot, that like in comparison to Bond, Goldfinger looks real sloppy. And I think Goldfinger actually looks fucking cool here in his like gold colored cabana set.
It's because Bond's in a fucking terry cloth baby blue play suit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, we're supposed to think he looks buffoonish. I think the only time he does is whenever he's kind of freaking out that he can't be cheating at for like half a second there.
The bar is really low here.
Like, he very much fits the vibe of rich evil guy in the way he is presented. But yes. Bond figures out that Goldfinger sits in a certain seat so that his accomplice Jill Masterson's spying on the game from the window and relays whatever cards is over to the radio. That is a good, smart way of cheating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. With a Bond, James Bond, he finds out Goldfinger pays Masterson to help him cheat and to be seen with her. Bond threatens Goldfinger over the radio, making him pay his prey $15,000 in earnings.
I looked up, and it's, I think, the equivalent of $150,000.
Amazing.
in this current moment. So
that makes sense.
I love that Jill like goes out of her way. We've talked about this in our previous episode too. Ian Fleming was obsessed in From Russia with Love, pointing out that both of his villains were asexual, and then this movie like goes out of its way to be like, even though you later see Goldfinger like really hitting on pussy galore, Jill Masterson's like, no, pays to be seen with him. And it's just like that. She's like, that's it. Like, I'm not going to sleep with that guy. Like,
not sleeping with him.
Which he also asks of Pussy Galore, like, are you, like, what are you being paid for? Like, he's very interested in this question.
Well, you know, Bond, he's a curious cat. Bond spends the night with Jill, but when he goes to get a chillier bottle of champagne, he is attacked and rendered unconscious by Goldfinger's right-hand man, Oddjob, after he makes a lame remark about having to listen to the Beatles with earmuffs. Thanks, Grandpa. I only left that reference in because to me, like, it's an interesting thing that, like, the Bond of the first two movies seems cool and hip to young people. And I feel like this, even though this is, like, the more fun comic movie, that, like, a reference like that is, like, the thing that instantly makes you be like, oh, no, like, he's for dad. He's not for the kids. Like,
literally a grandpa.
Yeah, totally true.
Him and his
Absolutely.
38-degree champagne he needs perfectly chilled. I'm like, okay.
My dear girl, there are some things that just aren't done, such as drinking Dom Perignon 53 above a temperature of 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's as bad as listening to the Beatles without earmuffs.
And it also just feels like Connery's maybe the only Bond that would hate the Beatles, even though Roger Moore is older.
There's a spinoff where Connery kills John Lennon. He's responsible for the shooting, I feel like.
This makes sense.
Exactly.
I see it. When Bond awakes, he finds Jill dead on his bed, suffocated by being covered completely in gold paint. Gavin's favorite piece of John Barry music plays over, Bond calling it into the Home Office.
This would be where I would mention most people will recognize this piece of music, which is sampled in the Sneaker Pimp song 6 Underground, which I don't know if anybody else but our age would recognize. Is like 75 versions of that song are on the Saint soundtrack. So that's how I heard it as a kid. But yeah, if you've not heard the like harp section that plays as he like calls in Jill Masterson's death, it's so good.
My hot take about this scene is, like, I knew of this scene because of just the iconography of it all. When I watched it in the movie, my first thought was, that's it?
Yeah.
That's it? That's how they frame it? Like, that's how it's shot? Okay. Much cooler.
Right, you kind of just go, yeah, she's fine. She's just asleep.
The Life magazine cover was way better.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is one of the things I didn't mention at first up front, but like, yeah, that's one of the things that like carries this over into the pop culture oeuvre is that, you know, she does this full photo shoot for Life magazine in the gold paint and whatnot. But yeah, like I agree. Like, I think that the vision in our brains of what that looks like have been sort of taken over by everything that sort of came after it, you know?
Yeah. Because I was like, it's almost throwaway in the movie for what it is. I thought there'd be more.
Back in England, M warns Bond not to take this case personally and blames him for Masterson's death, which I thought was a ballsy move. M was like, oh, by the way, if you didn't, I literally told you to watch that guy. I didn't say, like, get this woman killed. Bond is dismissed, and he and Moneypenny need to get a room. She gets to toss his hat this time, and then he eventually leaves with giving her a little kiss on the cheek. Once again, Chels and I are loving this evolving story of Bond and Moneypenny. But as I said in the very first episode, they are an HR nightmare.
HR nightmare.
I love that Moneypenny is unexplicably North American.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, working for
She's
MI6.
right out of secretary school, went straight to this job and never looked back. I would let her ruin my life, though. I'm throwing that out there.
And she's also only, I think in the filming of this movie, she's only like 3 or 4 years older than Connery as well, but she seems like almost motherly to him.
Yeah.
Does anyone else get this?
And it's funny
She's actually
too because
mature.
Yes, mature, yeah.
Oh, well, some girls have all the luck. Who is she, James?
She is me, Miss Moneypenny. And kindly omit the customary byplay with 007. He's dining with me, and I don't want him to be late.
So there's hope for me yet.
It's funny, too, because Lois Maxwell is... she stays on for a really long time, as you'll see, Chels, as Moneypenny. She goes all the way up through, the years until Timothy Dalton, I believe, is when they finally realized, that she would be his grandma if they kept that up. But I agree. Like, she's really not that much older. And then especially when they replace Bond, but she does give off, for some reason, a sort of like mature vibe in comparison. But maybe that's what Bond needs in his life, honestly.
Probably does. He wouldn't be able to handle her, though. Bond attends a black tie dinner with M and a gold expert who explains smuggling gold is ideal as it can be melted down for transport without being able to trace it. This scene is horribly edited in terms of continuity. Like, I was watching that and then I rewound it and then I'm like, what is going on? So Gavin, I'm glad you noted that in our notes because I was like, what's going on here? Did they lose some shots or something?
It genuinely feels like that. And one of the oldest editing lessons in the book is if the scene is strong enough, continuity doesn't matter. But this is literally just a scene that's just like knowledge dumping. And so I couldn't help but just like look at other things that were on the screen. And I was just like, okay, we're like not paying any attention to where anybody was in the scene. Or
I also love that it's a black tie dinner for 3 people.
Yes. Yeah. It feels very that scene in 1989 Batman where he takes Vicky Vale to the really long dinner table and she's like, eat here often, and he's like, I don't think I've ever been in this room before in my life.
Because the banker is named Smithers, I think, which is like really hilarious as well. So
we finally get to see the Q branch's office the next morning as Bond meets with the newly minted Q to retrieve the gadgets for his mission. I love the fact that Desmond Llewellyn talked about how this was his big, even though he had that scene in From Russia with Love, like this was his big, like, I'm Q now. And he's like playing the scene and Guy Hamilton is like cut. He's like, no, he's like, you don't like this guy. You're annoyed by this guy. Like, he's like, no, I'm going to be reverent to him. Like everybody in the office would be reverent. He's like, no, you don't like this guy because he breaks your gadgets.
Yeah, that's a fantastic sort of dichotomy between the two, which goes on for fucking 17 films,
yes.
Right? And then I think Q, like his total screen time is like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Across all 17 movies, but like he's maybe the most key takeaway from all these movies across the years.
Well, I also like that he is such a good contrast to Moneypenny, because Moneypenny is so charmed and just so willing to throw herself constantly at Bond over every little thing he does. And there is literally nothing, like, Bond could save Q's mother from a burning building and Q would be like, I could have done that, whatever, like, come on. So I love that sort of, and like, honestly, like, maybe the queerest relationship out of all of the people James Bond works with.
Yeah, and that was his initial instinct as an actor, was like, oh, I'm meant to be a simp for Bond.
Exactly.
And then Hamilton's like, no, you detest this guy. It's like your most annoying coworker, which we all know. But
yes.
Like,
wait a second, what are you telling me, Cody? Was I? No.
Yes, it was you. It was you all along.
You were like, I've been waiting years to tell you.
Yeah.
Ingenious and useful too. Allow a man to stop off for a quick one en route.
It has not been perfected out of years of patient research entirely for that purpose, 007. And incidentally, we'd appreciate its return, along with all your other equipment. Intact for once when you return from the field.
Oh, you'd be surprised the amount of wear and tear that goes on out there in the field.
Bond receives the Aston Martin DB5. It's bulletproof and stocked with license plates of several countries. The interior is completely spy-fi, including the smokescreen, oil slick, and an ejector seat. Q tells him they expect the car back. Big mistake.
This is my time to shine.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chels. Take the back seat real quick. So what's interesting about this model is that this is actually the prototype of the DB5.
Right.
Aston Martin was very reprehensive about giving them a car. So the production actually had to pay Aston Martin, and this is the last time that they ever had to pay for a car ever again. But so they lent them a car. This exact model was at one point red. They repainted it silver for the movie. This exact car was in The Saint with Roger Moore, and then later in 1981 was in Cannonball Run, also with Roger Moore. So it's got a long tie to James Bond. This is also the same model that later in 1997 is stolen. Or sorry, it's sold to a collector in Florida and then is stolen, marking one of the greatest heists in automobile history. The owner is paid out $3.2 million by the insurance company. and it has since been seen. We think there's sightings in the Middle East, but no one's to be sure. So
interesting.
Yeah, no one actually knows where this car is today.
I love straight talk.
Yeah. And now is Stray Man Corner by Cody Joel.
That's really so fucking interesting too, because it's like all those like stolen paintings from the Barnes Museum in Philadelphia, where like nobody's ever seen them again, and it's just how do you keep that like somebody will always talk, but I'm always fascinated by like actual successful crime because
exactly
honestly, to that point, good for them for pulling it off. Like, my respect.
And this totally saves Aston Martin, right? Like the sales jet up by 50% or so. And before this, in Dr. No, which you may have talked about, they approached Aston Martin for a car. They said no. They go to Jaguar for a car. They also said no. And so that's how they wind up with the Sunbeam Alpine, is that someone in Jamaica just happens to own this car, and so that was what they used for the first movie. So it's not until 2 movies later they talk Aston Martin into doing it.
And that's why there's that great line too, where he asked him about the Benz, is that it, or is it the Benz or the Rolls?
It's Bentley,
right?
Bentley,
yeah. He's like the Bentley, and he's just like, no, this time we're going. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in the book, which I've not read, you've read, but so he trades in the Bentley for a DB3. This is of course a DB5, which is not released at the time. So they're using the prototype for it. But I guess they managed to win over Aston Martin somehow.
Yeah, it's like a really smart product placement.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the hallmarks of this movie, is that product placement was not really a thing until this time period. And you see that with Ford throughout the movie. There's the Mustang that we talked about, and the Ranchero, in of course the Lincoln Continental later in the movie. But it was not really a thing until this time period.
Wow, I'm learning so much about cars right now.
You seem riveted. You truly do.
Bond runs into Goldfinger at the golf club and introduces him to my man Oddjob. I love him. Oddjob's a caddy right now. He's not the best caddy, and everyone lets Bond know it. Sorry, I love Oddjob so much. I just think about him and giggle. But anyways, Oddjob's his caddy, and Bond, dispensing with pretense, tempts Goldfinger with Nazi gold. Of course, it's Nazis. Bond, realizing Goldfinger is cheating, tricks Goldfinger into losing balls by switching his balls.
I love, and it's literally, that's taken directly from the book, but happens so much faster than it does in the book.
I really enjoyed those scenes.
Me too.
It's a fantastic scene.
Yeah.
Like, golf shouldn't be that entertaining, and finally, they made it happen.
And they all look cool, and I honestly think that's the advantage the movie has over the book, is the visual.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Slazenger sweater that Bond's got on, fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Bond is able to plant a tracker in Goldfinger's 1937 Phantom III. Goldfinger warns Bond not to interfere with him and shows off both Oddjob's strength when he crushes a golf ball in his bare hands, and his steel-rimmed hat used to decapitate a statue. I do love that they throw in that line where Bond's just kind of like, oh yeah, great, you can kill a statue, and Goldfinger's like, who cares? I own the place, whatever. Like,
it's his golf club.
Apparently, Connery hated the idea of the crushing of the golf ball, because he's like, no one can do that, right?
But that's the whole
Hamilton
thing.
Says that's the point. Exactly. Yeah.
It's supposed to be goofy. We are not working in reality anymore.
Exactly.
And then in the shooting of the decapitating of the statue, they couldn't get it right, and so finally Harold Zaccato was like, let me just throw it, because it's got a iron rimmed hat, and he said, let me just throw it and see what I can do, and he decapitated it one try. So I don't
God,
it just
a
speaks
dangerous
to
man.
This guy's insane.
Fully insane. Love him. Bond tracks the Phantom to an airport where it's loaded on a plane for Switzerland. Once in Geneva, Bond is caught in the middle of an assassination attempt on Goldfinger by Tilly Masterson, Jill's sister. Also, pretty sure she's a lesbian. He slashes her
she
tires.
certainly is in the book.
Definitely in the book.
Family.
He slashes her tire with a rotating blade that emerges from the Aston Martin. Making sure she's okay, he feigns nice guy, but she's not interested. She wants to go for help. That's how you know she's lesbian. She's not interested.
Exactly. She's not interested. Anybody that can resist Bond's charms is, you know.
Yeah, he says discipline 007, discipline, as though like, I've got to resist pulling over this lesbian to have sex with her. Just stay on the mission, Bond.
He's
Stay
like,
on
that's a
the
challenge for later.
Exactly. He's like, I'll take 2 more of you. She claims her sniper rifle case is for her ice skates, which I think is maybe the dumbest line in the entire movie, because it's like a box, and she's like, oh, it's my ice skates. What are you saying, girl? He questions her further, but she's saved by spotting a garage. Worried he'll miss Goldfinger, who has stopped, he hurries off and starts an all-evening stakeout at Goldfinger's compound. At the factory, he sees Goldfinger's army of Korean men melting down his car, which is in fact made of gold, so he can smuggle it out of Geneva. He sees someone else staking out the forest and realizes it's Tilly, but causes her gun to trip a perimeter wire. I love that it's, once again, his fault that this...
Yes, no, exactly. It's
he's
him being
fully
behind the
bumbling
ball.
through
Like,
this whole movie.
Yeah.
I understand why Sean Connery didn't like it, but I loved that he's a bumbling fool.
Bond and Tilly escape in his car, and a chase ensues. Thank God for gadgets, though, as he uses the smokescreen and the oil slick to great effect. However, they're still caught, and Bond tells Tilly to run for it, but Oddjob uses his steel-brimmed hat and breaks her neck. Bond has nowhere to run, his remorse causing his capture, but they've made a mistake, and they let Bond drive his own car at gunpoint. So he promptly uses the ejector seat on his nameless captor to hilarious effect. I love watching that dummy just shoot out the top of the Aston Martin. That just like, woo, this is a mannequin.
Yeah. And also at this point, he's gotten both Masterson sisters killed.
Yes. Which,
like an entire generation of Mastersons is dead because of Bond.
Which is really funny because this does happen in the book, but it happens much later. Like, they take Masterson, or Masterton as it is in the book, with them all the way to Fort Knox. And then Oddjob kills her there. And it's just really funny that this movie's like, you know what? We can only have one woman at a time.
I'm just amazed that these sisters, their names are Jill and essentially Tilly and Jilly. Come on.
Yeah, they had rhyming. Yeah.
In the book, they're twins. In the book, when he like sees Tilly Masterton, he like freaks out because he's like, "You're dead," and then he's like, "Oh wait, the existence of twins exists." Like,
and see, if this was the first movie, they would be twins still because they were trying to save every penny.
Yes.
Yeah, the same actress.
They're like, we have $3 million now. We can hire 2 actors.
2 women. What? Anywho, Bond tries to make his way through the maze-like corridors of Goldfinger's compound, but loses in a game of chicken and crashes into a wall. Again, bumbling. However, it's revealed he was never headed towards another car, just a giant mirror. Old Tech 1, Spy-Fi Tech 0.
100%. I mean, seriously, how did he not know it was come on, Bond. I know it was a stressful situation, but...
He was going through a lot. Maybe if he had a few drinks, he would have a sharper mind. He seems to be somebody who functions better while drunk.
Yeah. Well, once again, like, that goes back to, in Dr. No, we actually see him do, like, some detective work. And then in From Russia with Love, he's not necessarily doing detective work, but he's still, like, kind of keenly aware of his surroundings. He does sort of walk into that trap at the end of But in this, it's literally just, like, he's all instinct for most of the movie, which is why he spends half of it unconscious. Speaking of being unconscious, Bond wakes, strapped to a table spread eagle. Goldfinger knows all about Bond's profession as a spy, which is funny because he doesn't in the book, and lets him know he plans on cutting Bond straight down the middle using a brand new laser.
Laser.
Yeah, laser.
Because in the novel, this is a buzzsaw, right?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the idea of using a laser for something like this was like very much a fully brand new idea. It wasn't just like science fiction. The army was apparently like testing lasers. However, the look of the laser has truly nothing to do with reality. And Ken Adams was basically like, I don't know, live your dreams to the designers when it came to the laser itself. We get the classic exchange.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. There is nothing you can talk to me about that I don't already know.
Bond tries to negotiate his way out and name drops the phrase Operation Grand Slam, a bluff, as he just overheard Goldfinger saying it earlier. But Goldfinger shuts the laser off, and Goldfinger tells Bond he is worth more to him alive.
I don't know why he decides that, because all he knew was
right
Operation Grand Slam, right?
And on top of that, he fully calls him out. Like when Bond's like Operation Grand Slam, he's like, you could have heard that anywhere.
He's like, that's all you know is just the name, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just shaking my head at this. These men, they're just like, oh, I guess you're worth more alive now. 5 seconds ago, you were almost dead.
and then they just knock him out again, I guess, technically, because in the next scene, he wakes up again, you know?
Yeah, he's conscious for 10 minutes, and then he goes back to his resting state.
It's his little power naps between scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, though, he is living my dream because he awakes to the gorgeous Pussy Galore proclaiming he must be dreaming. She, however, is wearing a completely crushed velvet suit because she's what? The head bitch in charge and Goldfinger's personal pilot.
Absolutely. I never noticed it before. Because I was, really watching these analytically for the first time. That is a full crushed velvet suit. Like, that is like Austin Powers themed suit. Like,
it's a big movie for textures.
Yes.
It's terry cloth and then crushed velvet and God knows
I'm starting to think Austin Powers only watched this movie first, like the filmmakers.
No, he really watched them all and some Eurovision.
Oh, I mean, obviously Eurovision, you have to.
And so, Gavin, do you have the note that his original line when he wakes up?
Shit, what was it? I do know this. I just can't remember it.
She says, I'm Pussy Galore. And originally he says, I know you are, but what's your name?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I actually, honestly, I think I Must Be Dreaming is a better line. But the other one, I guess, probably would have made it into the history books.
Yeah, it's more of
it's
more of an R-rated line. Yeah.
Because Bond is now on one of Goldfinger's private jets, he orders a martini, shaken, not stirred, and asks Pussy how close to Goldfinger she is, and she says she's a damn good pilot. That's it. She also warns Bond that he can turn off the charm. She's immune.
Here's to Operation Grand Slam. This should be a memorable flight.
You can turn off the charm. I'm immune.
I think that's as close as the movie gets to like being like she's a lesbian. I mean, other than the like signs that she runs an all-female flying circus and whatnot, which we will get to. But like the book, she like flat out is just like, hey, I'm a lesbian, and he's just like, well, that's a challenge for me, that's. But it is really funny that like they couldn't say it, so they're just she's kind of like, I'm immune to your charms.
Honestly, I might use that line.
This is the first instance of him ordering a shaken martini.
I was gonna ask, is this the first? I think it's the first.
It absolutely is, because he does order him. I believe it's just scotch and whiskey up until this point. Truly. Bond asks if he can change in the bathroom of the plane before they arrive, and while Pussy's assistant attempts to spy on him, Bond outwits all of her peepholes and secrets his second transmitter into his shoe heel as he puts on a good show of shaving. He leaves the bathroom wearing a gorgeous gray tweed suit, once again, textures, and warns Pussy not to try and shoot him as it will depressurize the cabin and kill them all. Foreshadowing.
The backup people.
The backup people.
I do love the peepholes.
Phenomenal.
Somebody should be spying on that man.
It's so funny too, because he goes out of his way to cover up the peepholes in kind of a way that he would have an alibi, in kind of a way that he would be like, oh, like I hung my suit up there and whatnot. But then he like sprays the shaving cream
over time.
Over top of it. So like
not
she
subtle
knows.
at all, because at one point he looks at the peephole and then just jumps back.
Yes,
fully jumps back from the peephole. He is ridiculous. Bumbling continues. The Americans alert M to Bond's landing in Baltimore and that he's moving on to Lexington, Kentucky. M asks the Americans not to barge in as Bond must have it under control. Sure. The plane lands at Pussy Galore's flying circus hangar. Sorry, we will never have a better sentence. She has her own flying team she trains herself. Good for her. Oddjob picks up Bond in a car, and Bond remarks to Pussy, if he kills little girls like you. She responds, little boys too.
I love that exchange. I love how quick she is to be like, fuck you, man. I know who this guy
Great
is.
line.
I love
also,
it.
just Just as a sidebar, in the book, she had trained them as pilots, and they were her like team of flying circus, and they were so bad at their job that she decided to make them cat burglars instead.
We sure this is not a Batman prequel?
Yes, exactly.
She is Catwoman.
John Barry's score hits the trumpets pretty hard as we're introduced to Pussy's all-female pilot team. Bond is placed in a cell at Goldfinger's stud farm, and Goldfinger has called a meeting of all the major mafia families in the United States. He offers them each $10 million to help him with Operation Grand Slam. He uses a trick pool table to transform his lounge into his staging area, and while he's busy, Bond gets the drop on his guard and sneaks out of his cell. I love, this is another beautiful Ken Adams set, and it's so cool the way it transforms from like literally just a lounge with a billiard table to this big like computerized area with models and whatnot. Though I will say there has to be an easier way for that pool table to move, because that pool table like swings.
It's so stunning. Yeah, and when the Italian gangsters say, "What's with the trick pool table?" Right? Like it's, can we not get any more obvious than that? But it's a beautiful set.
I love that the villains in all these movies are very tacky. Like,
yes.
Everything from the giant fish, mostly for budgetary reasons, to a pool table flipping over. Why not? We need them to be a little silly Billy.
I agree.
As that's happening, Bond overhears the true details of Operation Grand Slam. Using Delta 9, he will knock out the population surrounding Fort Knox. They will blow up the fence around the site and descend into the vaults to steal the gold. A mobster named Solo backs out of the meeting, and Goldfinger leads him out of the room. Bond is caught by Pussy Galore using judo against him. Made me giggle so hard. And he is walked through the grounds as Goldfinger gasses the masked mafioso, revealing that Delta 9 is quite lethal. Bond, encountering Goldfinger and Mr. Solo, slips a note as well as his transmitter into Solo's pocket. The CIA begins to track Solo, but Oddjob is not taking Solo to the airport. He brings them to a deserted road, shoots Solo, and drives the car to be crushed, and the CIA loses the signal. I had a lot of fun with this.
That sequence takes so long.
It does take so long. And why does Guy Hamilton feel the need to follow Oddjob and Solo all the way to the airport?
And back.
I would believe if they just got into a car, had one quick scene, boom, stop, go, bye-bye. I would believe that.
No, they get into the car and then it never shows back up. That's the end of it.
I feel like there's a much more efficient storytelling way to do this.
Yeah. And that was I think the issue with this film, right, is that they ran out of time.
Yes.
And so the second half is much more underdeveloped than the first half.
And you can tell. I know they were churning these movies out, but you can tell they rushed a lot of this movie.
And also, I think is interesting too is that a lot of it's just a setup for a joke about Americans like loving fast food, because you see Felix and his partner at the KFC, and one of them has to like run out of the KFC to get in the car to track. And it's like, I get that, and once again, it's pretty clear that like they wanted this movie to feel more British and less American, so they're like, take some few jabs, but it's kind of a waste of time. It's not that funny of a joke. It's just.
And that whole segment is in Florida as well. It's not even in Kentucky.
Right.
Like you see the palm trees in the background, and like that goes on the entire car chase. There's palm trees in the background, which obviously we don't have in Kentucky. So yeah.
You're
very offensive to us Kentuckians.
I was going to say, I thought Kentucky was tropical. Back at the farm, Pussy says she will use her money to buy an island in Jamaica and implies Goldfinger will not be invited. Goldfinger realizes he has use for Bond, and Bond realizes it's impossible for Goldfinger to remove the gold from Fort Knox, and pieces together that it's Goldfinger's plan to irradiate the gold in Fort Knox for 58 years using an atomic device, which will raise the price of his own gold supply as the U.S. is thrown into chaos. I love this plan.
Honestly, a woman with a plan.
Yes, yeah.
He's a girly now.
It's a great scene where Bond sort of gradually figures out like that's his plan, and we figure out at the same time as the audience that he's, not actually trying to steal it. He's trying to blow it, or he's trying to irradiate it.
$15 billion in gold bullion weighs 10,500 tons. 60 men would take 12 days to load it onto 200 trucks.
Now, at the most, you're going to have 2 hours before the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines move in and make you put it back.
Who mentioned anything about removing it?
And there's like literally no hints about that until it happens in the movie. And it works too if you're familiar with the book as well. I'm not one of those people who thinks an adaptation has to be one for one with the book, but there is a nuclear device in the book because it's how they're going to get through the walls at Fort Knox. And I like the idea that it's like, oh, there's still a nuclear device involved, but it actually has nothing to do with stealing the gold.
Because in the books, he actually steals it, right?
Yeah. That's the whole goal in the book, which once again, impossible.
Very impossible. But yes, Bond, seeing Solo's crushed car, knows his gambit has failed, and he and Pussy decide to go for a roll in the hay. The spying CIA remarks, "That's my James." Bond refuses to take no for an answer multiple times, and Pussy flips him into the hay. He flips her in return, and their fighting turns into sex. And like the movie does make it seem like it's consensual, but there's a long road to that consent. I gotta say, it's pretty rapey right there. He's literally forcing himself on her.
It's very rapey, but like it's so funny that the movie knows it's wrong. Like that's what's wild about it is the movie the movie almost feels like we're like, oh hey guys, like eventually she's gonna be cool with this, and it's like no, like that's not how this works.
No.
Because there's moments where you go, oh, this is a product of the time, right? When he slaps Tank on the butt and whatever, but this is not, I don't think, one of those.
No. Not at all.
Where,
no.
Yeah, even at the moment, even at the time, it just probably wasn't right.
And Honor Blackman has said some very nice things about Connery over the years, and I guess like, it doesn't really matter, but like, a lot of that stuff, like, I mean, this was obviously in the script, but a lot of like his physical stuff with the women comes from Connery himself. And like, that's, so it's like.
It's done things he has said just randomly. It.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, oof, on top of oof. Yeah.
It's comforting to know that if he was a jerk on set, that she could kick his ass very easily from her like TV show training.
Absolutely.
She's a real Avenger.
And I hope that's now the centerpiece of the discussion of her character, because she's actually the most useful character in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day, right?
And to date, from the 3 Bond films that you've seen, Chels, and the TV special, I also think she's like the best Bond girl. Like she's the most capable.
Easily. She is. She actually has skills, a purpose in the plot other than being hot. She speaks for herself quite literally.
Yeah.
And she's one of the very few that's actually older than the actor playing Bond at the time.
Yeah.
She didn't come from a Miss Universe pageant.
No.
No, he did though.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, exactly. Operation Grand Slam commences as Pussy's flying circus prepares to gas the areas around Fort Knox. Everyone instantly falls over as they're exposed to the gas. Goldfinger's men blow their way through the gates and use Goldfinger's laser to cut their way into the vaults. Goldfinger has the atomic device armed, just as everyone stops playing possum, as Bond talked Pussy into replacing the deadly Delta-9 with a harmless gas. Bond is handcuffed to the bomb in the vault and seemingly left to die until the guards who are faking their slumber attempt to retake the building. Goldfinger planned for this and reveals he's been wearing an American general's uniform the whole time to aid in his escape. I love that reveal because it's one of those things that they don't bother with in the book. He just kind of gets away, and it's like never discuss. Like, and so I just love the idea that he's just like, oh, I knew somebody was gonna fuck this up. Just like takes off his uniform and has like an American general uniform. Though I do think
it still has a very heavy German accent.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. But I do think it's really funny that he then orders he's like, they're the villains. It's like, sir, you're still German.
He's a girly with a plan.
Exactly.
But then becomes the first James Bond villain with a golden gun as well.
Yeah, very true.
I would hope so. But yes, Oddjob, trapped in the vault with Bond, tries to stop Bond's escape. Bond, realizing he can't stop Oddjob with brute force. Yeah, right? Bond's not strong in this movie. He tricks him into getting electrocuted by touching a wire to some bars that has, Oddjob's hat stuck between the bars. I will say, finally, James Bond had a brain in that moment. He learned what electricity did before, and then he applied this knowledge. I'm proud of him. So sad
Right,
for my boy
exactly.
Oddjob. I choose to believe he lived. I choose.
I mean, he just falls down. And as we've seen, the entire U.S. Army can fall down and it can be fake. So
Exactly. The entire U.S. Army can be multiplied by the same people.
by the same people over and over again. The army retakes the vault, and Bond, using gold bars, forces the bomb open, but panics as he can't shut it off. Luckily, a specialist reaches in, and the countdown stops right at 007. I love the fact that he's not the person who stops the bomb. And I also love the fact that he is literally just going to tear every wire out. Like, he grabs all of the wires, is about to pull, and the guy pushes him out of the way and picks the right one.
There's a thing is spinning.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, I should stop this spinning.
Yeah.
I also talk about
that's
how
my only strategy
gold is
here.
a soft material. It is one of the softer metals to the touch. And he's using
Yeah.
gold bars for so long in this movie, just beating it against something. I'm like, that would just destroy your gold. It's just breaking it up. Come on, my guy. You're not getting anywhere with this battering ram type.
So we've gotten to my favorite moment, though, which is where, after the fact, Cubby Broccoli says, so originally it was the clock was going to stop at 3 seconds.
Right.
Right. But he's like, oh, it should stop at 7 seconds because it's 007. It says 073. So, yeah, but then they shoot that shot where Bond says,
You okay, James? Where's your butler friend?
Oh, he blew a fuse. 3 more ticks and Mr. Goldfinger would have hit the jackpot.
which no longer makes sense.
That
But
is
it's
so
still
funny.
in the movie.
Did not even notice.
I was trying to make sense of it, and I said, "Oh, well, it must be that a tick is 2.3 seconds in British terms or something like that."
Nah, the math just didn't math very good that day.
He's talking about metric time telling. That's what it is,
That's
Cody.
true.
You're right.
That's exactly
That's how they tell time.
Yeah, it must be metric, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're in metal time. Bond has told the president wants to thank him personally. I'm choosing to believe this is JFK. And he's to be flown in a private jet to Washington in an ambush by Goldfinger, which, honestly, good for him. Bond uses the same warning about guns on a plane with Goldfinger, but then attacks him, forcing Goldfinger to shoot out a window and be sucked out of the cabin to his doom.
I that shot is amazing.
This is Looney Tunes, and I love it.
It also maybe the funniest moment in the film is when they cut back to the guys tied up in Fort Knox still in the airport.
Yes. Yeah.
They needed a cutaway to set everything up.
I love, too, that in that scene, he's like, where's Pussy? And Goldfinger's like, I'll deal with her later. And then, literally, Bond realizes Pussy is flying the plane and tries to stop it from crashing to no avail. The CIA searches for Bond's body from the crash, but it's revealed that Bond and Pussy parachuted to safety, and Bond won't let her call for help until they have sex again.
Oh, no, you don't. This is no time to be rescued.
And where are they? Just geographically, where are they? Because
are
when
they?
RX says, in 2 hours, I'll be in Cuba.
Right.
Also, they were in Kentucky, and then they end up in water. I have questions.
Yeah. You're over Tennessee, maybe Georgia at that point. Where are you in the world?
Yeah, there aren't little baby islands like that in the Gulf. Not
No.
like that. But no, he very much is coercing her into sex, just like that happened on Days of Our Lives 100 times.
Wow.
Where a woman just agrees to have sex just for the safety.
Yeah, she's like, I guess.
Because I do not believe she is interested in him at all.
That's the end of Goldfinger. We're left with a screen that says the end of Goldfinger, but James Bond will be back in Thunderball. Final thoughts on the movie. This one is a breezier watch than either of the other two. I still like From Russia with Love a bit better. I think it sort of has
I like the story made more sense. I felt like I was following more of a plot, whereas this one, it's like plot ? Gold. Lasers.
Just like on final draft, highlighting a word and be like, replace this word every time it appears in the script with a gold. But I do really like. I mean, I fully understand why Goldfinger has its place, and honestly, I almost would have loved to have seen what Guy. Not to say anything bad about Terrence Young. I think Terrence Young is a great director, but I would have loved to have seen what Guy Hamilton did with From Russia with Love, because I like this dummy Bond. But I like the tone of Russia better. I don't know, Cody. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this becomes sort of the format for the rest of the James Bond movies, right? Like this sets a template, and it's really sort of the mark of the Bond mania, right?
Yeah.
There's rumors of there's theaters showing this movie 24 hours a day to sort of keep up with demand, and it's unfortunate that Fleming missed all that, but like, this is the height of Bond mania,
Beatlemania and Bond mania. He had to have hated it.
Intersecting, even though they hated mortal enemies, Beatlemania and Bondmania. I do want to talk real quick about, we always love to talk about the Bond women. We love to talk about the villains. We love to talk about the gadgets. Just a real brief, like, Masterson sisters. They're kind of useless, especially Tilly, killing Tilly off so quickly.
What's the point of, honestly, either of them? The first, Jill, had a little more to do, a hair.
Right. I get Jill, because Jill gives him reason to hate Goldfinger more so than just it being his job. But Tilly is, I mean, I'm shocked that they even learn each other's names in this version of the story.
Yeah. Tilly is very pointless. Like, good for that actress for getting some money and being part of a historical thing. Man, I wish they did more with Jill. Like, you don't just like poorly shoot a fully gold lady like that for nothing. Come on. This is
more
like girl
coverage.
Okay. It's just wild.
And then Pussy Galore herself. As I mentioned before, I really love Honor Blackman's performance. I love the fact that she got to do judo in hay instead of on cement like she used to have to do on the Avengers all the time. But I do like, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head too, Cody, where she also, because she's older than Bond, like has like an air of like, I have my shit together, like we're doing my thing, it's not me doing your thing. Like I don't know, I think she, for as much as the movie like kind of maligns her into being sort of a closet Casey lesbian instead of an out lesbian like she's in the book, I think I don't know, she just comes off as so fucking cool.
You're quite a girl, Pussy.
I'm strictly the outdoor type.
I'd like to think you're not in all of this caper.
Skip it. I'm not interested. Let's go.
What would it take for you to see things my way?
A lot more than you've got.
She is cool. Even when she's being coerced into sex, she's cool.
I didn't get to talk about how he pronounces it.
Yeah. Where he just adds several S's.
Yeah, no, it's almost like pussy.
Pussy.
Your impression's pretty good.
Oh, why, thank you.
Yeah, I like it.
I only do it so people will compliment me on it. So that's the... Then finally, Goldfinger and Oddjob. I mean, obviously, we've said so many nice things about Oddjob. I think he's really great. I like Gert Frobe's Goldfinger. He is kind of like, I don't like... He's still not like, I'm still waiting for a Bond villain to like really make like a impression on me, like to like really stand out, because for all of Guy Hamilton's talk about this, like he needed superhuman enemies, Oddjob is the superhuman enemy. Goldfinger is kind of whatever. Like he looks cool, but like,
I do wonder, like I saw in the casting that Orson Welles was approached, but he wanted too much money. I do wonder, like, what that would be like.
He would have been amazing.
It would have been so good because he is such a cartoon of a man.
Yeah,
love him.
We all do, but at the same time, it's like, I think anytime the Bond villain becomes too recognizable, it's sort of lost its charm, right? Like even with Christopher Walken, which I think he was great. You're still like, oh, it's Christopher Walken.
I think one of the worst examples is Jonathan Pryce in Tomorrow Never Dies. Jonathan Pryce is like super recognizable, but he's just going so full ham that it's just like, oof, this is not good.
Is it?
But yeah, and then in terms of gadgets, like this is our first real heavy gadget movie. I think my favorite is the fake pigeon on top of the head. Why?
Yes.
Like genuinely
For what's
why?
under.
No, it must be a duck, right, or a seagull.
No, it's truly like a pigeon. Like it's like even in the special features,
they can't swim.
I know.
I don't know. It must.
Like, what are we doing here, folks? And then he does give him like the tracker and the other stuff, but mostly it's the car, right? In this, it's truly just the car is the Supremo gadget.
I would have liked to see more of the gadgets used. It seems like we were introduced and then they never got their real time to shine.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thermos will return.
The thermos will absolutely return.
It's in the credits.
It might be Bond 35, but it's coming. It's coming back.
It's gotta be there.
Trust me.
It's absolutely gotta be there. Well, I think that's case closed on Goldfinger. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Q Division. Before we give our outro, Cody, once again, remind people what you've just recently worked on and also where they can find you online.
Yes, The Neighborhood Watch will be coming out sometime next year. I do not know the release date. Hopefully it does not change titles again. But that is the movie that was with the one with Jack Quaid and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Please keep an eye out for it. I am at The Kentucky Kid. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a true pleasure, and I'm glad to see you after all these years. Absolutely.
Yeah, likewise.
The Q Division is available on any major podcast app. If you'd like to listen to our previous episodes, we're basically available wherever you listen to them. Please make sure to rate and review our show while you're there. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at QDivisionPod on both, or you can email us at qdivisionpod@gmail.com. Chels, remind the agents where else they can find you and the other stuff you're doing.
I'm Chels725 on like the Twitter, Blue Sky, Letterbox, Serialized, which is Letterbox for TV. You can see how many soap operas I'm watching right now. And also, and a rewatch pod. We watch so much stuff over there. Currently, I'm watching way too much reality TV and soap operas. So go hear my thoughts. But I'll challenge every listener. If you give us a 5-star review, I'll make Gavin read the review in his James Bond voice, his Sean Connery impression.
I'll do it.
Do it.
You can't stop me.
Stop
and as for me, you can find my other long-running film podcast at The Mixed Reviews on any podcast platform. It's co-hosted by my good friend Louis Rendon. To find more information about The Mixed Reviews, please visit glitterjaw.com/mixed-reviews. Until next time, we hope we've left you shaken, not stirred.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch, a spider's touch.